All right, it looks like our numbers are pretty stable. I want to welcome everyone to our session today. Get your head in the cloud, cloud strategies for enterprise asset management. Presenting with us today will be Andrew Parker and David Horton. Andrew and then David, would you like to introduce yourselves briefly?
Hey, I'm Andrew Parker. I've been with Cityworks 11 years now, and I'm the IT manager and manage our Cityworks Online infrastructure.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm David Horton. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Like Andrew, I've been here a long time at Cityworks. This is my 20th year. I run the Cityworks Professional Services Group and implement Cityworks all around the country with folks like yourselves.
Thanks, Andrew and David. And also moderating with us, we have Jamie Pine, who will help us with some questions towards the end of the presentation. Before we get started, just a couple of brief housekeeping items. To drop a comment or question, you can click the red Live Now button on the left-hand panel of your control screen. That will open up the session. Scroll to the bottom and then click on questions. And there, please leave your questions as we go along the presentation, and we'll try to address those at the end with whatever remaining time we have. If you need to leave the session at any point, just click the upper three buttons in the top right corner of your menu, and that will take you back to the conference lobby. Please do not close your entire browser completely. That will lead to issues getting back into the sessions later on. And then a quick plug for our sponsors and exhibitors. Please visit our partners in their virtual space and feel free to start live chats or conversations with our awesome sponsors and exhibitors. With that, I'll give it to Andrew to take us away on the presentation.
Awesome, thanks, Gregor. So before we get started, I just want to point out how much cooler David's background is than mine. He's got a pool table and the TV. I do have a mini kitchen, so working from home is fun. All right, welcome to Get Your Head in the Cloud. Here's the obligatory safe harbor statement. So during this presentation, we're going to be talking about Cityworks Online, kind of what it is, how the architecture is created and managed, and how we manage the sites in that environment. And then after that, we'll talk about who should consider Cityworks Online, what's a good fit, what kind of clients should be looking at that as an option, and how do you get there? What kind of things do you need to think about when either migrating to the cloud or starting a new project in the cloud? And finally, we'll talk about when is a good time to do that. So let's get started with what is Cityworks Online. So Cityworks Online is basically a hosted Cityworks instance in the cloud. And you may not know this, but we introduced the Cityworks Online service in 2012. So we're coming up on 10 years of this service. So it's been around a long time. And right now we have about just over 90 clients on the service. So it's been around a long time, and a lot of clients are finding a lot of success on the platform. We have clients who are AMS only, and we also have PLL only and a mix of both AMS and PLL. We have a number of PLL public portals that have been deployed on the platform. So the whole suite of Cityworks is available in the Cityworks Online environment, including many integrations. A lot of Cityworks Online clients will have integrations through our APIs. One that comes to mind is constituent engagement platforms like Crowdsource Reporter, SeeClickFix, and CitySourced. And there's many other integrations as well that are currently deployed for our clients in Cityworks Online. So let's talk a little bit about the architecture of the infrastructure. This is a diagram. It's kind of busy, but if you think about Cityworks, obviously there's a database, there's the IIS application, and your users browse to that application in a browser. So what we've done is we've tried to split up a lot of the components of that infrastructure to make it more scalable and resilient. So the database, well, let's start at the application level. So all traffic to Cityworks Online goes through a load balancer, and this load balancer distributes traffic evenly to backend servers. And it'll also detect automatically if one of those backend servers goes down or becomes unhealthy, and will automatically replace that instance. If looking at this diagram, you can see the load balancer at the bottom, and then the application servers. There's always at least 2 application servers for redundancy, and that can scale automatically. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And we've split out a few components at the application level layer. So there's the site files and attachments that make up the Cityworks application, and that's split out from the app server and stored in a central file server. It's this section right here, the FSX service that AWS provides. And then above that, you can see this Redis cache. This is where the session state for the application is stored. So typically, if you were to install using the installer on a Windows server, the files would be on the C drive, and the session state would just be stored in memory. We've split those out so that the application server doesn't rely. We don't rely on an application server to store that information. We can replace an application server, and you won't even have to re-log in. Your session is stored in this separated place. And at the database level, your database is stored on a managed SQL service called RDS in AWS. And we'll talk more about the reliability and security of all of this infrastructure. So security is really the top priority for us in a cloud infrastructure, and that all starts with encryption. So when you think about the traffic leaving your browser going to the Cityworks server in the cloud, all of that traffic is forced over HTTPS. So that means all of that traffic is encrypted over the internet. And that's done with a publicly trusted SSL certificate. And then once your data gets to the database is encrypted at rest using industry standard AES 256 encryption protocol. And so the entire life cycle of the data leaving your browser and to the database is encrypted. And the connections to the SQL server, we also force SSL connections. So that's when the app server connects to the database server, it's over SSL as well. So it's encrypted from end to end. Another aspect of the security design is isolation of your data. So while you are sharing resources like hard drive space and compute resources, each client has their own unique database. It's not a multi-tenant database where your data is living in the same place as another client. Every client has their own unique SQL server database. And we can provide you a backup of that database in the standard SQL back format, and it will just be your data. And likewise, each IIS app pool for the Cityworks application is unique per client. So that helps segregate your data from others. So let's talk about the actual data center where your data lives. So AWS is the service we use, the cloud provider that we use, and their data centers are world-class, obviously. I've just listed a few high-end points here. There's a lot more information about the AWS data centers. If you just Google AWS data centers, you can find details about these 4 points and also their compliance certificates that they maintain, SOC 2, and all kinds of certifications that their infrastructure maintains. So, there's at the perimeter, there's security guards and fencing, and their infrastructure has backup power and fire suppression, and they do separation of privilege and threat detection, and even the locations of their data centers, they strategically choose to mitigate environmental risks like flooding and seismic activity. So really, their data centers are as secure as you could get. And on top of that, how do we secure the infrastructure that we control? So the infrastructure is scanned weekly for vulnerabilities by Cityworks using a product called Nessus. And if any vulnerabilities are found in the infrastructure, we mitigate those as quickly as possible. At the application server level, we have intrusion detection with a product called CrowdStrike and anti-malware with Bitdefender. And then also at the application level, there's a web application firewall. You may have heard of a WAF. It protects against common attacks on web applications like cross-site scripting and denial of service. All of this is built in to a Cityworks Online deployment. All of this security is in place and monitored by our professionals. All right, so now let's talk about how we've architected the infrastructure to be reliable and resilient. So if you think back to that diagram I showed, there was an application level, a storage level, a database level of the infrastructure. Every level, every layer is designed to be multi-availability zone. So in AWS, there's a concept of an availability zone, and you can think of that as a separation of all resources in the data center. So separate network, separate storage, separate physical location. So the idea is if an issue occurs in an availability zone, it won't affect other availability zones, or shouldn't, in that region. And so every layer of our architecture has resources in at least 2 availability zones. So it can survive an outage of an entire availability zone. At the database level, we utilize SQL always-on availability groups with automatic failover. So if an issue is detected in the database, it's all part of that service. It will automatically fail over to the secondary database server, and that's using the industry standard and built-in Microsoft technology, SQL always-on availability group. And then at the application layer, like I was saying, there's a load balancer, and then behind that is an auto-scaling group of application servers. Those will be replaced automatically if a failure is detected, and can also scale automatically if the load reaches a certain threshold. So really, Cityworks Online is designed to handle any size of traffic, any size of client however many users you have, it will scale to meet that requirement. And then a critical component to any implementation are backups. And Cityworks Online has robust backups in place. At the database level, the RDS service provides a point-in-time restore for any time in the last 35 days. So if you accidentally deleted something at 2 p.m. yesterday, we can restore it to 1:55 yesterday and get back the data that was lost. And then beyond that 35 days, we keep monthly snapshots for 2 years. So your data is very safe and the backups are always available. As far as the files, which could include print templates, XML layout files, and also any attachments that you've uploaded to your work activities, those are backed up hourly for the last week, and then daily for 35 days, and then monthly for 2 years. So robust backups there as well. There's been multiple instances of clients live on Cityworks Online who've accidentally deleted their data somehow, and with these backups, we're always able to restore whatever they need. And on top of that, everything is managed by our professionals at Cityworks. We perform any data restorations, like I said, that are required. And we also perform the Cityworks upgrades. Cityworks upgrades are deployed by us, and they're usually deployed shortly after a release has been made public. For major versions, we wait until the first service pack release just to make sure any bugs are worked out of it. And all of that's managed by Cityworks. You don't have to worry about upgrades anymore. All right, the last thing I wanted to touch on was an optional kind of extra service that's provided. That's an extra license item. It's called Data Storage Plus. So Data Storage Plus gives you 2 extra things in your Cityworks Online deployment. The first is a sandbox site, and the second is a replica database. So first, let's talk about the sandbox site. So this is a clone of your production database and site files into a second deployment. So this can be used as a test site, and it can be used really for anything you need it for, to develop new workflows, training your end users, testing new templates. One of the biggest benefits, I think, of the sandbox site is that we can upgrade your sandbox site to the next release version before it's applied to your production site. So this would be a great way to test a new major version. You'll be notified well in advance of that update taking place. And if you have Data Storage Plus, you can reach out to us and we'll upgrade your sandbox site before the production upgrade, so you can test all your workflows. So that's the sandbox site. And then the second thing is the replica database. So what this is a separate database that's kept in sync with your production database in real time. So any changes in production will immediately be applied in this replica database. And the purpose of it is mainly for reporting purposes. So if any sort of reporting application or platform requires a direct database connection, this replica database can provide that. We'll give you a SQL login that has read-only access, and allow you to make a direct database connection to this database. So one use case would be if you were authoring new crystal reports. Typically, the process would be, if you didn't have Data Storage Plus, we would provide you a backup of your database, and you would need to restore it locally on a SQL server that you control. And then you would author your reports against that database locally and upload the report through the Cityworks interface after it's done being authored. With Data Storage Plus, you can point your Crystal report software directly to the replica database and author your report that way, and then upload it in the same way to Cityworks. So it saves you having to restore a backup to a local SQL server. Other use cases might be Microsoft BI, Power BI, or even ArcGIS Insights that requires a direct database connection. This is how you would make those connections. All right, I'll turn the time over to David now.
Thanks, Andrew. That was a really good explanation of what Cityworks Online is. We're now going to pop through a few slides and talk about who should consider migrating to Cityworks Online. And you'll notice a theme as we go throughout these next few slides. They're kind of rhetorical questions because we feel like everyone should probably consider moving to Cityworks Online. So kind of the first point that we always like to make with Cityworks Online, a good candidate for moving to Cityworks Online is an organization that might want to look at focus from managing IT infrastructure to managing workflows, managing the content in their AMS or their PLL system. Now they can focus their time rather than worrying about system architecture, site structure, where those files live and reside. They can spend more time managing workflows for their assets, their permits, licensing, no longer focusing on the bits and bytes. This also comes with a bit of overhead, or sorry, relieving some overhead for your IT group, which could allow them to either handle other things that are strategically important to the organization. In some instances, it may allow for additional growth in that group without actually adding payroll, because we've relieved some of that weight off of their shoulders. So click next slide there, Andrew. Who else should consider migrating to Cityworks Online? As Andrew mentioned, anyone who wants to be on the latest and greatest software. We have seen a number of clients, through the professional services group that come to us looking for assistance to get upgraded because they became version locked. They couldn't upgrade Cityworks because some third-party integration wasn't ready for it, or the version of Esri they had wasn't ready for that upgrade, numerous reasons. So migrating to Cityworks Online allows you to not worry about those upgrades anymore. As Andrew previously mentioned, those major upgrades happen typically after the first service pack is released, and then service packs are performed shortly after they're released. Who else might want to migrate to Cityworks Online? Through our professional services group, we also help have helped a lot of you who had experiences, bad experiences in many instances, or just difficult experiences externalizing Cityworks. One of the great things about Cityworks Online, there's no VPN required. If any of you have worked with externalizing your Cityworks instance via VPN, it can be a major bottleneck and a performance inhibitor. On Cityworks Online, all of your firewall and proxy settings, as mentioned by Andrew, are handled and managed by Cityworks. And so Cityworks natively becomes accessible anywhere. One other consideration, anyone who wants faster and easier support The previous point is really relevant here. I think a large percentage of the support questions we field in our support group have to deal with externalization and troubleshooting a lot of those issues. So if you're on Cityworks Online, we're no longer troubleshooting those externalization issues. We're no longer troubleshooting, your unique environmental issues or system architecture issues. In addition to that, we've got quick access to the site and the database, including that access can be granted to our developers. So when we do validate we found a bug, our developers can go run code against your site and help us mitigate that bug quicker. One other thing, Andrew mentioned this, integrations need to be service-oriented, so utilizing APIs. So anyone who's got current integrations to their Cityworks platform using APIs can basically be lifted and shifted with no additional effort right into Cityworks Online. So how do you get there? Couple of different options. Engage Cityworks professional services. We have helped a number of our existing clients that are on premise move to Cityworks Online. If you've got an existing relationship with one of our authorized business partners, maybe they implemented you originally, or they've done work with you, helping you with integrations, certainly reach out to those business partners and re-engage them. They can do this work as well. They can move you to Cityworks Online. And there's a link to our partners page. Here's what it typically looks like getting to Cityworks Online, kind of the basic steps. Now there may be additional steps depending on the scenario and how far behind current version you may or may not be. But the basic steps are from moving from on-premise to online is we take a snapshot of your current production database. We upgrade that snapshot to be equivalent or at the same level that Cityworks Online is currently operating at. We deploy that into Cityworks Online and then grant your users access to it. And we're going to do that for the purpose of user acceptance testing. We want your users to go through and vet all of their workflows in Cityworks Online. And then we will refresh that snapshot with a current production snapshot and you go live. So pretty painless. When do you get there? Our question is basically, why not now? Every demo that you've seen, throughout this conference, every demo you've seen from any of our sales folks in the last 10 years, or nearly 10 years, as Andrew mentioned, has taken place at Cityworks Online. So our admonishment to you is start planning now. And there are a couple potential roadblocks that we do want to identify. If your GIS is not externalized, that will be an issue because Cityworks Online runs off of single sign-on. So your Cityworks, your GIS will need to be externalized and accessible either through your ArcGIS portal login or through your ArcGIS Online login. And that's how we gain access to Cityworks Online as well. And if you have any old or outdated architectural integrations that rely on database triggers or SQL batches, those will have to be upgraded to service-oriented using APIs as that direct database access to the live production database anyways is not available. With that, let's jump to Q&A. Jamie and Gregor, let us know what we've got.
Okay. So we've got one here that says, since PLL is used by planning and permit offices and these departments need to legally retain certain records and have easy access to data, how does Cityworks Online ensure that these legal requirements are met, including document attachments to cases?
Like I said, as far as backups of that kind of data, I guess it would depend on the time requirement, but right now the snapshots are kept at the most 2 years. I think if it needed to be longer than that, the client could easily download those attachments and store them in a longer term storage location. But I think typically 2 years is enough for most of those requirements.
And I would think, Andrew, just to chime in on that, we would make that available for the client to download via secure FTP.
Yes. Well, and they can also access the attachments right through the Cityworks interface.
Right.
We've got one from Michael Duncan at Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services. I believe we answered this going through the presentation. What cloud provider does Cityworks use? Currently AWS. He's also asking about Azure or GCP. Any further comments there?
Yeah, we've deployed a similar, almost exactly mirrored infrastructure in Azure. Currently, no clients are live on that infrastructure. It's fairly new, kind of a proof of concept at this point, but it is ready, and I think in the future we'll be able to offer that as an option to clients, whether they want to go deploy into AWS or Azure. As far as GCP, we haven't deployed anything in GCP.
Another one that says, are there any data centers in Canada?
Currently, the Cityworks Online offering is, the data center is in Virginia. For Canada, I can speak to our partner Esri Canada. They are deploying a similar infrastructure and hosting service in Azure in a Canada region. And so I would suggest if you're a Canadian client looking for a hosting solution, reach out to Esri Canada. I think they'll be able to help you.
We have another one from Daniel Arsenault, City of Edmundston. Kind of a devil's advocate question here. David covered a few reasons why you might not be, ready to move to Cityworks Online. Just what is the main reason not to make the switch? Again, we're advocating for the switch. Only thing I could really think of is if you were really wanting to version lock yourself, for a period of time, or are not comfortable with the update cycles that we have, maybe one reason not to consider it. But other than that, just kind of the outdated architecture that David talked about. Anything else we want to discuss there?
I think that covers it. If the upgrade schedule, if you can't maintain that, or if you have integrations that require direct database access that you haven't migrated yet, that would need to be done before.
Yeah, any other special exceptions you can think of on your end? And when I say your end, I'm speaking to all of you watching, clients and partners. Please reach out to us, and we're happy to discuss.
So just back on the Canada, the Esri Canada and hosted we got a question here that says Canadian Online is hosted in Ontario with a backup in Quebec. Just a little more information there.
Thanks.
We got another question from Margaret Tinberg, Village of Schaumburg, Illinois. For a community that has many internally built systems integrated with Cityworks through the APIs, any issues or possible hiccups migrating to Cityworks Online?
As long as they're using the APIs, I don't foresee any issues. Your site will still be accessible, those API endpoints from those integrations. And so as long as your firewall allows the external traffic, the traffic going out to the Cityworks Online servers, there won't be any issue.
Yeah, and I always point out that is the reason that we do a test deployment, and we give you access, and we can go through a period of acceptance testing to just vet all of that.
At what level can you restore data at? Example, file/folder, table/database.
Yeah, so the backups are snapshots of the entire file system and database, but we can restore down to a single file. And at the database level, it kind of depends on the situation. We'd have to analyze what we're restoring. A full database restore is easy. We have restored table level data, but at that point we need to confirm that any constraints on the table are met as far as foreign keys and things. But we are able to restore down to the table level data as well. Quickly.
A new question from Rocky at St. John's County, Florida Public Works. We use a lot of SSRS reporting with Cityworks Online. Will we be able to access the SQL tables to generate these reports? I believe so with the Data Storage Plus option. Andrew, you want to confirm that?
Yes, that's a prime example of what the Data Storage Plus, the replica database, would be used for. So that would be live data replicated from production, and SSRS would be able to connect directly to that server.
So it looks like we're out of time here, but if we didn't get to your questions, we will follow up with them at a later time.
We have a couple people asking about the flow chart diagram, and we'll have our respective CSMs follow up with those customers and push it out to you. And additionally, we can make these slides available. So with that, I'm going to end the broadcast. Take care, everyone, and we hope that you can see the rest of the presentations today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.